Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here, especially because papers on education are not always presented for political science and regional studies audience, and I see it as a big advancement, so thank you for having me here. Actually, the title of my presentation changed slightly. My co-author, we added the second part, which is, can Freya's Pedagogy of the Oppressed offer a viable alternative for Ukraine? And I will explain why. Because we were writing this paper and doing this research, and it was very inspiring and very emotional undertaking for us. And we were thinking about this paper at the moment, as well as research paper, but also a positional paper. We want to take a stance, and we want to dedicate our research to all our participants, teachers, students, head teachers, and to all students in Ukraine and all teachers in Ukraine who are going through education at the moment, because they deserve much better than what they have now. Before I continue, I want to ask you, how many of you have direct or had direct experience of education in Ukraine? Okay, studied in Ukraine, taught in Ukrainian school? Wonderful. So I think we can continue our discussion in more detail about that. So I want to start with how I come to this research. I did my PhD on Ukraine 5 years ago, and after that I was doing different topics. Currently I'm a senior research associate in Kazakhstan project. This topic came as a motivation and as something that I felt after attending a very inspiring lecture by Michael Apple in Budapest this year during the educational conference, that we need to bring something back to where we are coming from. So I felt very, very motivated to do this study, and this is my way of giving something back. So this study was done with my colleague and co-author, Svetlana Shudla from Drogobich Pedagogical University, and I'm explaining a little bit how we come together. She was the only one attending comparative education conference, and this in Toronto a year ago, and this is a good example of how isolated Ukrainian researchers are and how difficult for them, language barrier, financial barrier, to join this community. So I'm very excited that we are trying to have a global reach, but I also want us to have a local reach to those countries and people we are working with. So just to do it justice in remaining 5 or 7 minutes, I will just give some snapshots from the paper, and I do encourage you to read it and give us comments, because as I said, it's very much a work in progress. We started a big undertaking. We want to continue this study because this is just a pilot study of 3 rural schools, 2 urban schools in Lviv region, Ukraine, and we want to do similar studies in other regions, because Ukraine is diverse, and what we are getting from this work, that there's a lot of understanding that needs to be there to understand the country and people. I said that we are taking a stand against the state of development of Ukrainian pedagogy at the moment, because our major concern is intellectual isolation, and if you are not developing science, you can't expect advance in pedagogy. So the section, let's be honest about state of Ukrainian pedagogical science, we take some examples about this issue. We continue then by presenting just a summary of our findings, and if I can start just giving you some of the quotes. For example, the first question we were interested, are there any shifts in philosophy and practices of teaching in Ukraine that can be attributed to effects of Maidan? And our as I said, it's still work in progress, but our conclusion that there is very little or no effect, unfortunately, and to our dissatisfaction, and that's why in the end of the paper we do try and offer alternative, and we think that public phrase pedagogy of the oppressed can offer a powerful alternative by focus on dialogue and basically asking students how they feel in school, and this can be a first step. A lot of our respondents, especially teachers, they explained that for them Maidan was the third in a row. They remember the events of Maidan, of revolution on the granite, Orange Revolution. There was a lot of dissatisfaction that this chance was not taken and was not realized, all these previous uprisings. There was an image of very oppressed and very teacher on whom nothing depends, and we found this really dissatisfactory. For example, they were saying the teachers are very oppressed. That is why to implement reforms in education is very easy. We will do basically whatever you tell us. And then they say nothing depends on us in the system, even when the government want to show that they are doing public discussions. Basically, they will pass resolution that they think are most appropriate, and they call this as just a game imitation of public discussion, or zabavka, as they say. There was a lot of questions. We were hoping to get some answers for us and then some emotional, resolutions for us, but we probably got more questions than answers. Our participants were asking if something radical will not happen in education, what are these Maidans were for, what are these deaths were for, what is this war in the east of the country is now. There was actually we were also interested in philosophy of teaching, and it seems like Maidan is perceived as a separate event. None of our participants thought about it as a metaphor for changing power relationship in schools. So I will move to another question. How did the events in Maidan affect communication and power relations in schools? We noticed very important differences between responses of students from urban and rural areas. So for urban areas where students had direct participation in local Maidans, they were more vocal and more articulate about their experiences. They were telling about their families and parents and friends participating in Maidan or Ato or volunteering or collecting help and so on and so forth. Urban students, they felt more detached, but at the same time there was a lot of ideas and desire to help, but through prayer. So they were saying we were praying with our families, with the whole school, and so on and so forth. And I will move to our next quote, which really characterizes what's going on in Ukrainian school at the moment, when our participants say the communication style in school is authoritative, not authoritarian. So there is a move towards more equal relationship, but we are saying it's a long way to go. Students were saying the changes as such, I don't feel any changes. From rural school, there is a response, we are often afraid to say what we really think. For me, teachers are distant people, чужие. There is no communication as such. There is a lesson, and that's it. The quote continues, I don't think teachers treat us as adults who are able to solve our own problems, who are able to understand a lot in life. We do not have it here in our school. Again, I want to say that these are just responses of the participants that we interviewed. There might be more diverse picture when we go to different areas, more selective schools. But I saw today my task is just to deliver to you their voices, their messages, and I think that we need to hear them. The third question, just really quickly, what are the obstacles still to overcome? And again, there was a lot of issues that are coming up. The quality of in-service teacher education, which our teachers said that it's all done just for the sake of putting a tick or staviti galочку. Those who teach us on these courses, they perhaps worked in school for some 30, 40 years ago, do you believe that they can teach us about innovations in school? The same critique about regional and district educational authorities. And as one head teacher concludes, the problem with our education system and is that it is governed by people who never worked in schools. Their knowledge about schools come from the time when they went to school. They relate to schools as I am to the ballet. This quote finishes. To conclude, where is Maidan in Ukrainian schools at the moment? As we see it, and as quote suggests, in pedagogy nothing changed. Basically, Maidan is being discussed in extracurricular activities. There is a lot of change in extracurricular activities, but there is no direct impact on pedagogy. Everything is how it was before, but we became more patriotic. We have a lot of extracurricular activities. Another quote, no, we were just discussing the events, nothing changed in teaching. There is also an interesting continuation from the Soviet era when students have what they call political information or linika or assembly in school. So they were saying, if there is a lesson, we study only the lesson. But on Thursdays from 9:30 till 9:10, we have political information. Then we discuss what is going on in Ukraine. So to our regret, but also with the hope, we are saying that the vision of dialogic pedagogy is not yet a reality in the schools we went to. But there is a lot of hope for Ukraine, especially now in Ukrainian pedagogy with my co-author and other colleagues from Ukraine. We have applied for Education Research Association, Ukrainian Education Research Association, and we have now 4 years to build a national network in the country. So I hope that this will bring us hope. Thank you very much.